In 2019, headlines around the world exploded with disbelief: Trump wants to buy Greenland. At first, it sounded like satire. A joke. A meme gone too far. But no, it was real. President Donald J. Trump genuinely floated the idea of purchasing Greenland from Denmark, citing it as a large real estate deal. The world laughed. Late-night shows had a field day. Danish politicians quickly shut it down with a firm, Greenland is not for sale. But behind the humor was a strange realization: Trump wasn't entirely joking. His fascination with expanding American influence through unconventional means, like buying territory, wasn't a one-off moment. It was part of a pattern. Now, in 2025, with the possibility of Trump returning to the political arena, a bizarre rumor is emerging: what if Trump has set his sights on Canada? It sounds ridiculous. Insane, even. But then again, so did Greenland. This video dives deep into the strange, speculative, and oddly plausible idea that Trump may be plotting a new kind of invasion northward. Not with tanks. Not with soldiers. But with capital, charisma, and chaos. Let's go back to the origin of this entire theory: Greenland. In August 2019, Trump confirmed to reporters that he had indeed discussed buying Greenland. He called it strategically interesting and lamented that Denmark wasn't open to the idea. He even cancelled a scheduled diplomatic trip to Denmark when Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen called the proposal absurd. For most presidents, the idea of buying a giant ice-covered island might be dismissed as fantasy. But for Trump, whose worldview often centers around deal-making, branding, and real estate, it made perfect sense. Greenland was not just a piece of land. It was an opportunity. Strategic location. Natural resources. And a population small enough to potentially be swayed. If Greenland was even briefly considered, then we must ask, what else might be on Trump's mind? This was not a one-time curiosity. Trump's team reportedly explored options for other unorthodox expansions. While many of those ideas never saw the light of day, they signaled a mindset: real estate politics. And that mindset hasn't gone away. Let's talk logistics. If Greenland was desirable, Canada is practically irresistible. First, geography. Canada shares the longest land border in the world with the United States. It's essentially America's northern neighbor and strategic twin. Second, resources. Canada is rich in oil, timber, minerals, and fresh water, things Trump has always valued. Third, population density. Vast stretches of Canada remain sparsely populated, especially in provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan. But here's where it gets really interesting. Alberta, in particular, has shown increasing dissatisfaction with the federal government in Ottawa. There have even been murmurs of separatism. Some in Alberta feel more aligned with U.S. values, especially conservative ones, than with the current Canadian political climate. Trump, or at least Trump-style politics, would likely find a warm welcome in parts of Western Canada. Plus, Canada is English-speaking, culturally similar, and closely tied to the U.S. economy. All this makes it much easier to envision a soft merger in influence, if not in territory. Unlike Greenland, Canada isn't an island in the Arctic. It's integrated with the U.S. in trade, defense, via NORAD, and media. So why wouldn't a former president, known for thinking big and unconventional, consider finding a path into Canadian influence? Forget tanks and troops. Trump doesn't need a military. He has money, branding, media influence, and a legion of loyal supporters. The idea of a soft invasion isn't about conquering land, it's about conquering hearts, minds, and maybe, markets. Imagine this: Trump-friendly media outlets begin expanding coverage into Canada, especially targeting conservative-leaning provinces. Simultaneously, wealthy American donors begin funding think tanks, political action committees, or even startups in Alberta and British Columbia. Meanwhile, Trump himself begins investing in Canadian real estate. A new Trump Tower in Calgary. Golf resorts in Banff. Suddenly, Trump-branded properties dot the Canadian landscape. It's all legal. All private sector. But the symbolism? Powerful. From there, the influence grows. Trump-friendly figures in Canadian politics get endorsements. Social media campaigns blur the line between American and Canadian conservative discourse. It starts to feel like the MAGA movement has a northern chapter. This isn't fiction. This is a playbook already seen globally. Influence without force. Persuasion without borders. At first, Canadians laugh. They've heard it all before. Trump buying Greenland. Absurd. Trump moving to Canada. Hilarious. But the laughter fades when real investments begin appearing. When social media becomes flooded with pro-Trump Canadian content. When some local politicians begin echoing MAGA-style rhetoric. Canadian media starts to pay attention. Editorials ask, is Canada vulnerable to American-style populism? Have we underestimated our own susceptibility to foreign political influence? Meanwhile, citizens are divided. Some view it all as harmless capitalism. Others grow uneasy. Protests emerge. Memes turn into movements. The cultural identity of Canada begins to shift, even slightly. And people begin asking hard questions about sovereignty, influence, and the meaning of being Canadian in a hyper-connected, hyper-influenced North America. So what is this really? A conspiracy theory? A piece of political satire? Or a strange reflection of the world we now live in? Because here's the truth, Trump doesn't need to literally move to Canada. His brand, his ideology, his movement, those can travel. They already have. We've seen MAGA hats in Paris, pro-Trump rallies in Brazil, and populist leaders rising across Europe citing Trump as inspiration. So why not Canada? Why not Alberta? Why not a country so closely tied to the US that the political winds of Washington often drift north? This isn't about Trump the man. It's about Trump the movement. The strategy. The style. And what happens when a country with deep democratic traditions begins to feel the gravitational pull of a neighboring populist force? So, will Trump buy Canada? Almost certainly not. But will he try to influence it? Probably. Because that's what influence operations do. That's what brand empires do. And Trump is both. If 2016 taught us anything, it's to never say, that could never happen. Because it probably already is. The idea of a soft invasion into Canada sounds like the plot of a Netflix original series. But so did a reality TV star becoming president. So did the Capitol riot. So did a global pandemic shutting down the world. We are no longer in the era of the predictable. So, dear viewer, ask yourself, is this absurd? Or are we just too used to absurdity to recognize the next move? Because when Trump plays the long game, it's not always with laws or armies, it's with narratives, networks, and noise. And Canada? You might just be the next storyline. What happens in Canada won't stay in Canada. If Trump-style soft influence succeeds in shifting parts of Canadian politics or culture, it could become a test case for similar efforts around the globe. Nations with shared language, trade ties, or media consumption habits with the US may find themselves slowly absorbing American political polarization, especially the populist right strain embodied by Trump. Australia, the UK, New Zealand, all democracies with strong US media presence, could be watching. If Canadian conservatives begin mimicking MAGA slogans or tactics, it might embolden similar factions abroad. Political copycats are nothing new. But what's different now is the scale and speed at which ideology travels. Trump is no longer just a US figure. He's a global symbol, a shorthand for a certain type of anti-elite, anti-globalist, emotionally charged political identity. Canada may just be the next domino, or the firewall. The question is, how prepared is the world to draw that line? What if this isn't about Trump at all? Maybe the focus on Trump is a distraction. Maybe the real story isn't about one man at all. It's about the machinery of influence in the 21st century. Trump is just the most obvious, dramatic example. But the conditions that allowed his brand of politics to rise, distrust, inequality, media fragmentation, aren't going away. So what if the next soft invasion doesn't come with red hats, but with AI-driven content, influencer-led movements, or crypto-funded pseudo-governments? What if the invasion isn't north, but everywhere? Canada, in this light, becomes not a target, but a test. A democratic nation with strong institutions and a polite political culture is about to be stress-tested. Not by missiles. But by memes. By media. by movements that feel grassroots but are anything but. The real question isn't whether Trump will invade Canada. It's whether the next generation of influence will invade us all, and whether we'll notice in time. If this video made you think, or even just made you laugh at the absurdity of the world we live in, don't scroll past. Hit that subscribe button and join a growing community trying to make sense of modern geopolitics, media chaos, and the power games of the 21st century. Share this video if you think more people should start asking these kinds of questions. And leave a comment below. Do you think a soft invasion like this is possible, or is it already happening?